When you think of Singapore, what comes to mind? Probably efficiency, right? Success, that incredible skyline. And you're not wrong. It's a place that's always at the top of the charts for economic might. But what if that same engine driving all that success is also creating a kind of pressure, a pressure you just can't see in the GDP reports? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into. But lately, we've been seeing headlines that are, well, they're becoming tragically common. And they tell a completely different story. A story that just doesn't fit with that shiny, perfect image. It's a story of quiet, deep pain happening in the heart of its neighborhoods, affecting people of all ages.
So that brings us to the big question, right? The one we're trying to unpack today. How can a city that looks so perfect be in so much pain? How can a place that has basically engineered success be struggling with this massive mental health crisis? What is really going on here?
Okay, so to get our heads around this, we've got to look at something called the performance paradox. And it's exactly what it sounds like, this huge clash between the country's amazing success on a grand scale and the very real personal struggles of its people on the ground.
And here's the key takeaway, the thing you really need to get. This isn't just a bunch of people having a tough time. Nope. The analysis points to something much deeper. It suggests that the stress is actually baked into the system. It's a side effect of the very zero-failure mindset that made Singapore such a powerhouse to begin with.
And this pressure, it didn't just appear out of nowhere. It's literally woven into the culture, into the social fabric of the country. So let's pull back the curtain and look at the architecture of stress, you could say. We'll start with a concept that's uniquely Singaporean. Okay, first up, kiasu. It's a term you hear a lot there, and it basically means the fear of losing out. Now, you can see how that might have been a really useful survival instinct back in the day, right? But now, it's kind of morphed into this source of constant low-level anxiety that fuels insane competition in everything, from getting your kids into the right school to climbing the corporate ladder. Then there's what some call the meritocracy trap. Picture this. Society is one single ladder of success. In that kind of system, you're either climbing up or you feel like you're failing. There's not a lot of middle ground. And this creates this massive status anxiety, where even people at the top are constantly looking over their shoulder, terrified they're going to slip and fall. And all of that feeds right into the treadmill effect. Yeah, the country's GDP is high, but the cost of things like housing has just skyrocketed. So for a lot of people, even high earners, that big salary doesn't buy you peace of mind. It feels like you're on a treadmill, running, just to stay exactly where you are. It's a race you can't seem to win.
So we've talked about these big ideas, right? Kiasu, the meritocracy trap. But what does that actually feel like for people on a daily basis? Well, these pressures have a very real human cost, and it looks a little different depending on how old you are.
Just take a look at this. You can see how this pressure hits different age groups. For young people, it's all about academics and comparing themselves to others, leading to tragic outcomes and this feeling of just wanting to give up or lie flat. For older folks, it's more about isolation, this quiet loneliness. But look at that middle group, the working adults. They're getting squeezed from both sides in what's called the sandwich burden. Let's dig into that a little more.
Yeah, the sandwich generation. These folks are caught in a vice, and it's squeezing them financially and emotionally. On one side, they're trying to help their kids navigate this incredibly competitive school system. On the other, they're taking care of their aging parents. Get this, some studies show they're putting in over 70 hours a week on caregiving alone. That's on top of their full-time, high-pressure jobs. It is absolutely relentless. And the result? A staggering 72% burnout rate among working adults. But here's the twist. They're not quitting. Instead, they're doing something called job hugging. They're holding on to these exhausting jobs for dear life because they're terrified of the cost of living and not being able to find another one. It's like they're grateful for the money, but absolutely drained by what it takes to earn it. And as if that wasn't enough, there's a new pressure creeping in, the shadow of AI. Almost 60% of workers are worried that AI is going to shrink their role or even replace them entirely. And this has created this bizarre situation where people are secretly using their own AI tools, almost like a hidden second job, just to keep up with the insane workloads and look like they're on top of everything. Okay, so with all this pressure reaching a boiling point, the conversation in Singapore is finally starting to change. People aren't debating if there's a problem anymore. The real question now is, what do we do about it? How do you build a safety net that can actually support people? And this is the really critical shift in thinking. For a long, long time, the answer was always individual resilience. Basically, toughen up. You need to fit the system. But now, the focus is shifting to structural support.
People are starting to ask, hey, maybe we need to change the system to better support people. It's a move from fixing the person to fixing the environment.
And that new mindset is leading to some really interesting, concrete ideas. We're talking about things like a right to disconnect law, so your boss can't email you at 10 p.m., or making flexible work schedules a standard official thing. But maybe the biggest thing of all is a push to have a real national conversation about what success even means. Is it just about grades and money, or is it something more?
Because at the end of the day, this isn't just a debate about mental health policies. This is a much bigger conversation. It's about what kind of country Singapore wants to be. It's about its very identity and its future.
And one analysis I read summed it up perfectly. It said that for Singapore to survive and thrive in the next decade, it has to make a transition. It has to go from being a high-performance nation to a high well-being nation. The goal can't just be about the bottom line anymore. It has to be about people actually flourishing.
And that kind of leaves us with a huge question, one that applies way beyond just Singapore. In our world, a world that is completely obsessed with growth and numbers and metrics, what should a nation's success really be measured by? What does a truly successful society even look like?